Good morning and welcome to the August 9th, 2021 edition of Let It Be Known. The National Newspaper Publishers Association and Black Press of America welcomes you all. This morning, Arthur C. Morton. He is a successful businessman who has worked in the commercial and investment management real estate industry for many years. Additionally, to his credit, he has been socially conscious, working on sustainable energy ventures before it was popular to do so. But Arthur is also a novelist. He has written a romance novel called 49 So Fine. This morning, we talk to Arthur C. Morton. But first, of course, let us bring on the National Newspaper Publishers Association's President and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacey Brown. And on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, representing over 230 African-American owned newspapers and media companies across the country, Karen Carter Richards, our distinguished chair, publisher of the Forward Times in Houston, Texas, we send you greetings, and we can't think of a better way to start off the week than to let it be known.
Yes, and the news this morning, Dr. Chavis. The Bureau of Justice Statistics reckons that the United States spends more than $80 billion every single year to keep about 2.3 million people behind bars. Many experts say that figure is a gross and underestimate because it leaves out a myriad of hidden costs that are often borne by prisoners and their loved ones, with women overwhelmingly shouldering the financial burden. These costs rise during the holiday season. Relatives of people in prison say as they make more visits, call more often, and send more care packages. National data is rarely gathered on how much prisoners' families pay into the correction system. So to better understand the hidden costs of incarceration, the Marshall Project asked people to document their spending, and nearly 200 people responded, Dr. Chavis. Many families said they shell out hundreds of dollars each month to feed, clothe, and stay connected to someone behind bars, paying for health care, personal hygiene items, and phone calls, and other forms of communication. So, Dr. Chavis, we see that it costs a whole lot of money to incarcerate someone.
It not only costs a whole lot of money, you're right, Stacey. It is much more than 80 billion a year, but also the human costs is even greater than the financial costs. Families are devastated by mass incarceration, that is Black families, brown families, communities of color. Families of color are devastated by mass incarceration in the United States. And I think that when this whole discussion of reparations happens, it should include not only what happened during slavery, not only what happened during the transatlantic slave trade, but what has happened since that time, the lingering effects of chattel slavery, the whole law enforcement system, as well as the so-called criminal justice system, the prison system, were all structured around the property of those that were enslaved, using the enslaved as if they were property. That's the point I'm trying to make. And so even today, the property rights, quote unquote, of inmates is to inure profit to those who profit off of mass incarceration. And there are millions of people who profit every day off of mass. So this whole thing needs to be changed. It needs to be challenged. But I'm glad that the Marshall Project and others are getting the statistics so that we can know the human impact as well as the financial impact of mass incarceration.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, one example cited in the study by the Marshall Project was Talitha Hayes. Each month, she adds $200 to the commissary account of her husband, William Reese, who has been in Louisiana State Penitentiary for 28 years. Each prisoner there is given 3 meals a day and some personal hygiene items like soap and toothpaste. But when Reese gets hungry between meals or when his state-issued supplies run out, the commissary money buys him extra food and other necessities. That is not the only way his imprisonment drains her wallet, Dr. Chavis. On top of the $2,161 she has put in his commissary account so far this year, Hayes has paid $3,586 in charges for talking to him on the phone when she can't make the hour-long trip to the prison, and even $419 for emails sent through the prison's email system. So it's big business, Dr. Chavis.
Oh, absolutely. Again, it's profiteering. It's a new form of slavery, and it needs to be challenged.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, by now, many have heard the story. A black realtor was showing how a house to a black man and his 15-year-old son in Michigan last week when they looked outside and saw police officers surrounding the properties with their guns drawn. Roy Thorne is speaking out now. He says, I knew once they surrounded the home, they were preparing for a standoff. He says, my instincts told me we need to get out of here. We need to get to where they can see that we are not a threat. A neighbor called the police saying a suspect arrested at the property a week prior had returned to the scene, according to the Wyoming, Michigan Department of Public Safety. But the caller was totally mistaken. The realtor was Eric Brown, who was giving Thorne and his son, Samuel, a tour of the home in the community of Wyoming just outside Grand Rapids. They scheduled the visit online, and all three were, of course, released without incident, but not before the police officers ordered them out of the home with their hands up and handcuffed each of them, placing Thorne and his son in the back seats of separate patrol vehicles. Again, this is something that is happening far too often.
Exactly. You know, we have driving while black, walking while black, breathing while black. Now, buying a house by black can be dangerous to your health. I just spoke at the NAREB convention a week or so ago, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the black realtors, as they call themselves. And I think that this whole problem of systemic racism gets into the housing market as well. So it's a serious problem. Thank God that what happened didn't end in a tragedy.
Yeah.
I think the realtor knew that he was in sudden danger, and thank God it didn't end in violence. But it just shows you that neighborhoods don't welcome diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, even when you go there for a professional reason, they question your presence. And this is the problem with America. The racial divide has gotten better, but it's still a long ways in terms of bridging the racial gaps in all aspects, from housing, health, environment, politics, economics. The racial divide is there.
Yeah, and you mentioned environment. I know you've talked a lot about environmental racism. In fact, you are the leader in that fight, Dr. Chavis. We keep seeing these things, regardless. We saw the officer in the George Floyd murder finally go to jail, go to prison, was convicted. Cameras are rolling all the time, Dr. Chavis. We see neighbors. Black people going into neighborhoods, looking at homes, innocently looking at homes, and these things happening. You fought the civil rights war. You've been fighting that for all your life. Where do we go from here, Dr. Chavis?
Well, I think we have to be more determined than ever before to press forward. I think sometimes when these incidents happen, when we certainly have to give them attention, and rightly so, that's what the black press does. But we also give it attention in a way that encourages people not to stop looking for homes. So the next time I would take, a lot of people, not just one family. I would take a crowd of people because when you see one person or two people in a neighborhood that don't have a lot of diversity and inclusion, you will get misjudged. But there's something about the ministry of presence. There's something about the struggle of presence. You show up with a group of people, then they may still call the police, but the police are not going to respond thinking that you're trying to be a robber, thinking that you're trying to take something. They may think, well, you're getting ready to stage a protest, and then you'll be handled differently. So I would say, overall, to your question, Stacey, this is what Frederick Douglass said a long time ago. Freedom is a constant struggle. It's just not something you win one victory and then you relax. Have we won victories? Absolutely. But those victors must be protected, like voting rights right now in Texas, in Florida, in Georgia, in Arizona, and other states that are trying to put in voter suppression laws. That doesn't mean that we're going to give up the right to vote. No, we're going to fight and fight and fight and continue to fight. That has to be our attitude.
Yeah. And Dr. Chavis, we see what Gregory Muhammad is writing in about mass incarceration. And you can read a whole lot more about all of these issues at blackpressusa.com and many of our member newspapers across the country. There are more than 230 African American owned newspapers and media companies in the National Newspaper Publicists Association, these stories and more. And on a lighter side, Dr. Chavis, Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian, Bobby Rush, Kim Fields, Magic Johnson, UB40, Smokey Robinson, and Stevie Wonder are just some of the names featured on Jackson 5 legend Tito Jackson's latest CD, Under Your Spell. In addition to an army of superstars, Jackson also listed members of his famous family. The blues-infused record, streaming on all download platforms from the SRGILS label imprint, contains the hit single Love One Another. The song features George Benson, Eddie Levert, Bobby Rush, Marlon Jackson, and Stevie Wonder. The accompanying video contains cameos from Brian McKnight, Deborah Cox, Kim Fields, Chris Tucker, and family members, including the matriarch of the Jackson family, Katherine Jackson, her sisters Janet and Latoya, brothers Jermaine and Jackie, and a host of nieces and nephews. In a statement, Tito says, it was me. It was a no-brainer because at the time, there was a lot of unrest in the world, especially in America with Black Lives Matter and the storming of the U.S. Capitol. He says his partner and him felt that it was a good time to write something to tell the people to come in peace and love each other. We are better than this. That was the basic principle of the song about Under Your Spell. It counts as Jackson's second blues album, and he also pays tribute to his friend and mentor, B.B. King. So look for Tito Jackson's new album, Under Your Spell, at all downloadable platforms.
That's great. That's great. You know, it reminds me of what Marvin Gaye did over 50 years ago. Music, our culture, and particularly the Jackson family, we salute Tito for continuing that strong cultural and almost cultural genius tradition of the Jackson family. And his album speaks to the times in which we're living in. And I hope that it goes well. And all the artists that you say have joined to collaborate with him, this is another great masterpiece from a family of masterpieces.
Yeah, it's extremely talented. Of course, everyone knows Michael and Janet, but that entire family, down to their nieces and nephews, Dr. Chavis, extremely talented people, very, very fortunate.
Come out of Gary, Indiana.
Out of Gary, Indiana. Yes, indeed. Dr. Chavis, I want to say good morning to all who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and whatever platform you chose to join. Let it be known this morning. We appreciate you. And want to say good morning to our special guest, Dr. Chavis. He's a successful businessman who has worked in the commercial and investment management real estate industry for many years, but he's also turned into an author. He's written several children's books, I should say, and now he has a romance novel. Let's talk to Arthur C. Morton about that new romance novel. Good morning, Arthur C. Morton.
Good morning to everyone.
Good morning, Brother Morton. Thank you for joining the Black Press of America.
Well, thank you.
So, Arthur, now we see two names on that screen, and I know it has everything to do with the new romance novel, 49 So Fine. Tell our audience a little bit about it.
49 So Fine is written under my pseudonym, Pierre G. Porter. 49 So Fine is a romance novel, an adult romance novel that took on the challenge of love, maturity, love and immaturity as between men and women, and basically through the prism of a man's journey in his maturing life, and some of the things he struggles with. A little steamy in his context, but I think the mission of the story is maturing and learning to how to mature in love and in relationships.
And it's interesting too, Arthur, that this is you of course are a man writing a romance novel. A lot of times we hear about the stories that women write. What made you do a romance novel? Because again, as we stated at the top, you have done some children's books.
Again, under my name, Arthur C. Morton, I've written a couple of children books. To Dance with Angels as one. It's about a little girl who has to learn to rise above bullying and teasing and find her way. They're chapter books, about 100 pages or so, illustrations, a couple dozen illustrations. The other one is John, Jon, and the Toy Maker of Toy Makerville, in which I wanted to write a Black Christmas story. Uh, Both were award-winning books. The third one coming out in the fall is The Land of Sugary, and it's a it's a book for children to understand. It's a struggle, the epic struggle between good stuff, bad stuff, and using sugar as something that we know is not good for children, and eating right, being healthy, etc. But 49 So Fine was certainly a leap. It was a turn around the corner, but it was a challenge for me, and also set the stage for the publishing company, um, Lotus 1016 Publishing. So 49 So Fine, once again, is a great read, 39 chapters, 324 pages of love and loving, and a story based in Philadelphia of a successful businessman and how he travels through his world, maybe being involved too much in self-indulgence, but and if that is the case, we know that many times there's blowbacks, and so there's drama, death, and murder, all that built into this novel. They say it reads like a movie, so we're real excited about it.
Yeah,
Excited.
and one of our viewers, David Youngblood, he asked, "Who is the audience for the romance novel?"
The audience is a mature audience. We're talking 30 years and 30 years and up. I have men and women. If you go to the website www.pierregporter.com, you'll see the write up. It's a great website, we think, but it's a mature audience, 30 plus, 60. People in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s are reading this book. Men are reading it. Many women are reading the book. We're real excited about the acceptance.
Yeah, and now we talked also too about what you've done in business. You have a business degree with a concentration on economics and finance. You attended, I believe, Temple University.
Yes.
How did this turn about from the business world? Or are you still in the business world? But how did it segue into writing children's stories? And of course, now we're talking about 49 So Fine, which is an adult romance novel. How did that come about from the business career?
Well, it's I guess when you like in the book, when you start maturing, you see things differently. Even in the world of wealth, one should hunt for real wealth, not the actual dollar bills that so many young kids and people chase, but what is the understanding of real wealth and prosperity? You know, should the game be about profitability, or should it be about prosperity for all? I tend to think it should be more of the latter. And so, 49 So Fine, it was, and book writing came a little late in my career. You know, Success, I measure success not so much about how many zeros are behind your name, but about your consciousness and your understanding of sharing and wanting to make a commitment to something greater than yourself in life, as Dr. Ben Chavis has done, for an example, in you as well, Stacy.
Yeah, and Arthur, you knew this question was coming. Angela Connolly, who's watching on Facebook, is asking, "Was this book based on your personal life?"
No, I don't think so, but they do say there's an element of truth in all fiction, but largely it's probably most likely it's a compilation of men and women that I have seen, and friends and relationships, and you know, when you just sit back and you look at the world and say, how can you tell a story that has some meaning about uh, love, loving, and living, and maturity, and from a Black perspective, and you know, it's like one day I was saying, you know, what would a Black man write about? What would be his version of, you know, 50 Shades of Grey? Uh, and it's a completely different book than 50 Shades of Grey. My perspective, you know, a man in his, you know, in his journey should be about, you know, responsibility, love, family, friends, and if he has, you know, more than his share of women in life, it may be a benefit, it may not, and it may create, but it creates for great writing, you know, great storytelling, and so I tried to weave that into a story that would make you laugh and smile, and say, maybe pull back and say, that's interesting. But at the same time, perhaps tells a story because, you know, the protagonist in the story, Harold Longston, is a man, is a mature man. He's a successful businessman. The plot, the story, the dialogue is all based in Philadelphia. Uh, and he's a lover of music and jazz and R&B, and he needs this music. He needs to hear this music as he travels through trying to understand his himself and his relationship with women and with people in the community.
Yeah. Dr. Chavis, I'm going to bring you into this conversation as we quickly, seems like, wind down the time here.
Well, that's okay. I think that first I want to thank Arthur again for coming on to let it be known. Tell us something about the publishing company that is publishing your book, Arthur, because a lot of times Black authors have a challenge finding publishers to publish their books. And sometimes that discourages Black authors. Talk to us about how did you get your books into the marketplace?
Well, and the the answer to that is you're absolutely correct. And what I wanted to do was, in experiencing that process, I just, you know, I reached out to one or two individuals, you know, people that were English majors, experienced in the world of public relations. And I just elected to start a publishing company and using this novel, 49 So Fine, as a platform. And I believe the success of the book will enable us to grow the company and provide that opportunity for other authors in the near future. We'll probably be looking at submissions come 2022. This year, this year, and presently, we're focusing on the success of 49 So Fine and the sequel book that will follow. Uh, but that hopefully that platform uh, will be able to broaden the platform to bring in other writers and present their work and have them on Let It Be Known as well in the near future.
Right. So you had to create your own business. You had to create your own
That's correct.
entrepreneurship. I think that's so important. If the major publishers, reject you or you can't even get to first base, I appreciate the fact that you decided to set your own company up. We find that out in real estate. We find that out in publishing. We find that out in every walks of life. As an investor, even commercially, at some point, there's some things that we just have to do for ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. I was a young man selling Black newspapers as a kid in my neighborhood. So, it cost a lot less back then, but the cost is whatever the cost is, it's the cost we should freely give up and keep, because if we don't keep them in our own companies in business, then there's no one to blame but ourselves.
Right there in Philadelphia, we give a shout out to the Philadelphia Tribune, Bob Hogarth,
Absolutely.
distinguished publisher there and one of the leaders of the
Absolutely.
Yes.
He's done a lot of great work,
Yeah, and Arthur, so the publishing company, is something that you came up with as well. What's the name of the company again? And is there a website for the company? I know we talked about the website for the book.
The website for the actually it's under development now. It should be up in about the next 30 days. Lotus 1016 Publishing .com publish.com. Lotus 1016 Publishing.com will be up in about 30 days. It was up briefly. We took it down to expand it, part of the concept of it. But certainly, the platform, the game of business and life is you crawl, walk, you run. So we're in the crawling stage, but we'll straighten up our back soon, as Dr. King says. When you straighten up your back, you throw off all the bull, and you get to the business of life.
Yeah, absolutely, and no one knows that saying from Dr. King better than Dr. Chavis. Dr. Chavis and Arthur C. Morton, we appreciate you coming on this morning. 49 So Fine is the name of the book, and as you can see, like he said, there's a pseudonym, so you'll see a whole lot more.
Pierre G. Porter.
Yes, Pierre G. Porter, and you'll see, as he said, there'll be a sequel to 49 So Fine. So we'll be certainly interested to see where this takes that whole company from here. Dr. Chavis, your closing thoughts.
Well, I really like his title, 49 So Fine. And I just want to throw this out to you, Brother Arthur. One of the sequels ought to be 59 Still Fine.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We'll see whether we can make that into a steamy and romantic novel.
Well, we appreciate you joining us this morning. We appreciate everyone joining us this morning. And let it be known, always remember, in this old African proverb, don't look where you fall, but where you slipped. We will see you tomorrow.